Thank you. Okay, so we've talked there about political parties now they can get more votes, and we've talked about knife crime. So let's move on to a question about economics and trade, if you like. We've got a question that's been sent in here. In light of parliamentary efforts, it is possible that having left the EU, we may find ourselves in a customs union, whether officially or de facto by way of the backstop provisions of the withdrawal agreement. In those circumstances, should your party be elected at the next general election, what would your party's position be on trade? I'm going to go to Chris on this, I think, first.
Thank you, Dan. Well, our position is one in favour of global free trade. It's a big reason it's a big part of the Brexit case. It's quite extraordinary, actually, that Jeremy Corbyn and Labour are insisting on membership of the EU customs union that prevents us from striking our own global free trade deal. The one benefit of Brexit that both sides of the argument are actually in agreement with, that you can strike your own free trade deals with other growing countries around the world, and yet that is Labour's position to cut that possibility pretty much dead. And of course, as the chairman, as the question has said, the withdrawal groups in the Conservative Party, well, the big print says we're leaving and getting back an independent trade policy and an independent X, Y, and Z policy across the board. But actually, the small print says we might very well not leave after all. We might be stuck in what they call a EU single customs territory, which of course has the same effect. Essentially, the EU would basically be responsible for our trade policy, but a situation that's worse than it is currently, because of course we wouldn't have a vote or any say in those deals. Absolutely dreadful. We are a party that's in favour of global free trade. We believe that the tariff barriers, generally speaking, have lowered substantially globally in recent years, but we want to move to a system of free trade. I read a fantastic argument in favour of free trade the other day by an economist called Henry George, who was an American economist of the 19th century. He wrote in a book called Poverty and Progress, and he said that free trade, or I should say protectionism, is sort of the opposite, the erection of tariff barriers and so on. Protectionism is what happens, is how we stop people from trading, stop people from buying, stop people from selling. Protectionism is the reason why we enact blockades is to stop countries from trading. It's a very strong economic sanction. So protectionism, just like the EU's customs union, is doing to ourselves at times of peace what our enemies would do to us at times of war, which is quite extraordinary thought. Global free trade is a mutually beneficial arrangement, and we're in favour of it, but I suspect I've need more time to go into that. But it's a huge vote in favour of free trade, and hopefully we get out of the European Union completely, and that's the policy that we can adopt.
Okay, thank you, Chris. I'm going to go to Richard next. So, I don't know what the SDP's official position is on a customs union, or whether it's official or de facto through the withdrawal agreement. But I think we'd be interested to know, if you were to be against being in the customs union officially or de facto, what the SDP would do about it should it actually come into government but be confronted with that fact.
That's an interesting question for all of us. Yes, we are unambiguously against staying in the customs union. It's been our clear policy throughout. But initially we wanted a Canada-style free trade agreement, and in the absence of that we want WTO Brexit. There is simply no point in staying in the customs union. Free trade does aid wealth, economic growth, all economic theory shows it, and any party should be in favour of free trade. The European Union is not a free trade area, it's a free trade area within its borders, has massive protectionism against the rest of the world, and against some of the fastest growing countries in the world. And why on earth would we want to pass our trade policy over to 27 different countries and not have any say over it ourselves? It's just not sensible as a policy, and I find it incredible that Labour should support it, and the Conservatives increasingly, through the withdrawal agreement, through the back door, seem to be supporting it. And your points you've made about the two-party system several times already, it's another example of how it's broken. It seems the only thing they agree about is a policy that, to my mind, makes no sense at all. So your question, I think, is if we came to government and we were in the customs union, what would we do about it? Well, we'd give notice to leave. And we'd probably give 2 years notice to leave so that business had time to adopt, and then we'd leave.
Okay, so I'm just going to, not just challenging your position on that, but for everybody else as well. And if we were officially in the customs union, it may be that we could give some sort of notice. But were we to find ourselves in the backstop, I don't think we actually can give notice to be able to get out of that. If we were stuck in the backstop scenario, what would the SDB do to alleviate that situation? I think I need to give it back to you.
Okay, I mean, it's a very interesting question. Obviously, that one of the reasons that people are so against the backstop is because it's got these tortuous provisions about how you actually leave it, where a committee is appointed of representatives from the EU and the UK, and they all jointly decide if we leave or not. I mean, my view would be that under the Treaty of Vienna, nobody could be stuck into an international treaty indefinitely against their will. So that would be my answer to that.
Thank you. One way.
If UKIP was in power, I would drop the customs union immediately. What's the EU going to do about it? Trade deals are great, but the main beneficiaries are producers, not consumers like you and I. We can easily just drop the customs union, informally, formally, whatever. We are under no legal obligation to submit to the EU once we've left. We can easily lower tariffs on products that the UK does not produce, so the imports for things that we don't grow here or make here become cheaper, benefiting you and I and everyone out there in the country. The biggest issue is, of course, to do with Ireland and the Irish border. My position is to have unilateral free trade within Ireland, between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. This won't harm the UK or Northern Ireland or the Republic of Ireland. It only affects the EU and their political grandstanding. Just do free trade with them unilaterally. It's not going to affect anyone, not going to hurt anyone, and it only becomes the EU's problem. We'll be fine.
Thank you. Neville, you're stuck in the customs union, de facto or official. What are you going to do about it?
I noticed I don't think we've mentioned the preferred nation status. Has anybody ever? Well, favourite nation status. Sorry, that we preferred nation. And has that been mentioned? That we can offer to Ireland, and so that would solve many of our say some of the challenges we have straight away. Free trade, of course, I concur with what the other panelists are saying. And of course, in terms of the customs union, what point is there having a vote to leave, and yet we stay in a bloc that doesn't allow us to go out and flex our own negotiating muscle around the world? Yeah. Now, what's the point? Now, but I don't want us to get overexcited about it either, because I know a lot of us are hanging on to the USA and hoping that the USA will come riding to our rescue. I think we need to be careful, again, even with that. I'm not contradicting what I'm saying, but I think we need to be careful when we're asking the USA to be our get out, because there's some of the areas around the USA trading that I will be concerned. Some of their own regulations I will be concerned about. So, but yes, we must be at the customs union. We must be at the single market. We must go out and once again be a nation that can trade with the rest of the world, emerging markets out there in Asia, in Africa, India. And one last thing I would say, we would certainly cut the foreign aid budget. We just cannot. If we want to really start looking at bringing back money into this country, nearly £14 billion a year in a foreign aid budget is an absolute nonsense. when we're spending 12 billion to police the whole of this UK. It doesn't make sense. Let's look at our foreign aid budget and let's really give it to those countries that need it, not the greedy, but the needy. That would be one of the things we'll be dealing as well. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, sure.
I don't understand how Ireland, the island of Ireland, gets this favourite nation status. The island of Ireland is part of the EU, so you have to give those favourite nation status to the whole of the EU. I don't understand how you cannot just Ireland.
Well, the most favoured nation status, I take your...
Separate Ireland from the EU, because they are the EU.
Yeah, but what we have is, we have the way the EU have used Ireland as a weapon, and it's been there. I don't even believe the EU recognised a few years ago that this was going to be their weapon. It popped up and reared up, and it became their number one. They found a way of really beating us over the head. Ireland, Northern Ireland, of course, and Southern Ireland, of course, logistically, we are one. Now, I do believe when the parliaments speak, we can speak with them. Now, the EU have come into the middle of that and decided they're going to be they were going to speak for Southern Ireland and they're protecting their interests, and I get that. But I feel that what we've got to do, we should be speaking to the government, we should be speaking to the Irish government. We need to get that relationship back, because I believe Ireland, Southern Ireland really, do they really want, are they giving up, they want to give up out their relationship with us for the relationship with...
No. I was born in Belfast.
Yeah.
So you're misunderstanding this completely. The Irish flag and the Germans in World War II.
Yeah.
They put this backstop to the EU, and the EU grabs it as an opportunity to think we can speak to the Irish. The island of Ireland is really not understanding the Irish situation. This is their big opportunity for reunification.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
you need to understand that, and to think that you can. I love what you said so far tonight, most of it, but this Irish situation is really not understanding. They cannot be separated from the EU. They've gone to the EU with this solution, and the EU doesn't care about Ireland.
No, I agree with that. I agree with that.
Raise their corporate tax
Yes,
rates beyond belief as soon as they've got control. But they are using this, and the Irish see the opportunity to unify the island, the whole island of Ireland, north and south, and that's what it is. So we could never strike a deal as most favoured nation with Ireland, because Ireland wouldn't be interested, and secondly, we could never do it because Ireland is part of the EU. So that really is not possible to do.
Okay, thank you. Just finally on this one, if you could do it quite quickly, sure.
Yes, I will. You know, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I've never heard anyone, apart from yourself tonight, actually brought the unification of Ireland up. Ireland has never been there's a great Irish song called A Nation Once Again, because I used to live in County Mayo and County Sligo back in the day, and Ireland has never been a unified country independent. No, sorry, it's been a unified country. It's been a unified country whilst it was under the British Empire. That's the first time it was ever unified, officially anyway, in known history. This is the problem. Ireland has the first time ever in history to reunify with the Northern Ireland and give that option to the people, have a referendum in the Republic of Ireland to actually ask, do you want a reunification of Ireland? That, I think, is a good solution. But
wouldn't that be good for Britain? Because then Britain would leave the EU with no problems.
Exactly. So
it would be the best solution to.
Yeah, I know. I totally agree with you. But this is another thing as well. Me personally, I would love to have a free trade deal with the European Union, but obviously the European Union does not want to give us a good deal, because then every other single nation state in the European Union will, hang on a minute, why am I part of this great union for if I can get a free trade deal? Why am I paying technically subs to be part of the European Union? Surely I want a free trade deal like Great Britain. That's how That's the reason why they're being like very hard and fast with us. And my thing is, being a libertarian, is that government make terrible businessmen. They don't, like, you see that how Theresa May is treating Brexit. She doesn't understand the no-deal concept, or she does, and she's purposely refusing it to acknowledge it. You have to have the option of walking away. Like, if you buy a car, the salesman, or you know that the salesman, you will walk away from a bad deal basically if it's too much of a thing. But the fact that Theresa May is literally saying, I will definitely have a deal with you no matter what the cost, they will say, you know, it's this sort of reason why government in general just make terrible businessmen. And I would love to have a free trade deal with the European Union, but it will never ever happen, because if that was the case, every other nation state would want that.
Thank you. I think there's a comment coming from the floor, but please do be very quick.
It's linked to my question. My question is linked to what you just said.
Okay.
All right. So, in the break that we're having right now, the Parliament's having right now, it appears that some articles are being written. Well, some articles are being written. There's a belief that business, and it's big business that is pulling the strings. Like, big business runs down the street, and that's why they want us to remain, and they don't want us to go to the EU, blah, blah, blah. Big business is realising now that no deal is better than Corbyn. Right?
Yes.
No.
You're right.
Briefly paraphrase.
It's 3 years. 3 years.
So, sorry, can I just?
So the question is this.
Yeah.
My question to the panel is this. Do you feel, or do you see the scene there? I think that needs to be mined. People are waking up to the fact that after 3 years of this immense battle, and the Leavers haven't given up, which is what they thought we were going to do, big business is waking up to this and saying, actually, I'd rather have no deal than Corbyn. What do you think? Because I think that's, if we push on that, it's a positive message. I think we'll get what we want. Because no deal leads to an FTA, which is my point there. You will have an FTA. Japan can have one, South Korea can have one, Canada can have one. We will have an FTA, but it has to be negotiated from outside. While you're inside, you're never going to get it.
Okay, so very quickly, Sean.
All of the regions of England now want to leave the European Union. Only London is the only one, and obviously Scotland, you know, not England. That's the only region London wants to remain in the European Union. Everyone is sick and tired of it and just wants to leave. So yeah, I totally agree with you in that regard.
Okay, we've probably got time for one quick question before we need to wrap up this evening. Direct democracy has been mentioned by a couple of people in the speeches earlier on, but we've had representative democracy for some considerable time. Through representative democracy, we get to have debates in Parliament, and committees get to scrutinise various pieces of legislation. So isn't that a better way to deal with things rather than going to an all-out direct democracy method of doing things? Conway, what do you think about that?
Representative democracy has its strengths, proportional representation has its strengths, direct democracy has its strengths, but they all have their weaknesses. Representative democracy's biggest weakness is that it is tribal. In the end, it's not really representative. I think we can reform that. I don't think we need to go down a full-blown direct democracy route. The problem with direct democracy is the infrastructure just isn't there. Technology is great, but technology just cannot reach everybody yet. But with representative democracy, we can change things. The best thing about representative democracy is if you don't like what the government is doing, you vote for the opposition and you can kick them out of power. Obviously, if neither the government or the opposition are any good, then you're a bit stuffed. My proposal is that we can retain representative democracy, but we take away all the party labels. So when you go to the voting booth, you look at the ballot paper, you just see names, you see their manifesto, you see what they stand for, and if you don't know, well, you're just going to have to guess or spoil your ballot paper or not vote. So I'm hugely in favor of candidates that people know. So all you have to do is get rid of I'm Labour, I'm Tory, I'm UKIP, I'm Lib Dems, whatever. Just get rid of all that. If your name is not out there, then you're not going to get the vote. If you haven't done stuff for the electorate, you're not going to get the vote. This is all you need to do.
Thank you. Sean, direct democracy or representative democracy?
Direct democracy, always. The thing about a direct democracy is that it bypasses our government, and as you can see from the 2016 referendum, is that it flushes out what the real truth of how political parties actually feel. I mean, we live in an inverted world now where the Conservatives aren't really conserving much of anything nowadays. The Labour Party do not represent the working class, and I'm a postman and firefighter. You know, if anything, I should be born and raised in Lewisham. I should be a Labour supporter in that way. They're not, and the Liberal Democrats are neither liberal nor they're democratic. Like the fact that they side with the biggest democratic decision in UK history and still have the gall to call themselves Democrats is an absolute disgrace. And they're not liberal either because they believe in hate speech laws. Literally, their deputy leader, Joe Swindon, wants wolf whistling now to be a hate crime. Whistling to be hateful. It's absolutely ridiculous the way we went. And these sort of referendum, like I said earlier, is that the 2016 referendum has been, the term referendum or direct democracy has been dirtied because of how badly and how poorly the mainstream parties are handling Brexit. So no one go, oh, no, not another referendum. No, I think quite the opposite. More direct democracy, because it will generally expose who these parties really are about and what they're all for.
Thank you. Chris?
Two quick comments, one on the last question and one on this question. Would that be permitted? Very quickly.
Go for it.
Very quickly. If Corbyn becomes Prime Minister, corporation tax, the high tax income rate for the most beloved will go through the roof, and that means that we'll in the end receive less in tax revenue rather than more. When corporation tax goes up, spectacularly, then businesses will then leave the country, and then we will have a problem. The solution is to lower taxes, bring corporation tax down, simplify taxes, so companies are not then spending money on clever accountants and hiding their money offshore. They actually pay into coffers and can then be spent on other priorities like public services. Quickly on the subject so I agree with the commenter on that in that regard. Quickly on the subject of direct democracy, I don't agree with it myself. I don't think we've got enough trouble changing the voting system, let alone anything as revolutionary as that. I don't agree with it. Anyway, I think our system itself is not, it needs tweaking, but I think the biggest problem is the people in it rather than the processes and the systems. The bottom line is that we encourage people to vote. Why are you voting? Don't not vote, come out. But at the end of the day, if you walk into a shop with a load of goods that you don't want to buy, you don't buy any. It's as simple as that, and rightly so. Not voting is none of the above, and that's a vote in itself. We need new parties and new candidates with new ideas to step forward, and one thing that will help in terms of reform will be changing the voting system to proportional representation, so we get members of parliament that are more in proportion with the votes that are cast throughout the country. No more safe seats, no more duopoly of Tory and Labour. Let's open it out and welcome new policies, new parties and new ideas, and then we'll make big strides in the right direction.
Thank you. Richard?
Thank you. Yeah, just briefly on Corbyn, I think we'd all be right to worry about policies which think you can tax the most geographically mobile parts of society, be they corporates or individuals, to the extent he believes, and they'll just sit here and take it. The fact is that that Corbyn's policies would lead to people being worse off, not better off. But the answer isn't just lower taxes, the answer is fair taxes. Tax rates that are low enough, but also fair to provide the tax revenues, because it's easy to believe in low taxation, but that also means you believe in low public services, and you can't argue on the one hand for more police and lower taxes, more NHS spending, lower taxes. It doesn't work. You have to have fair taxation. The country does need tax revenues, and we can't just pretend that cutting taxes for everyone, particularly the rich, is the answer either. It's getting the balance right. On direct democracy, I'm very open to more direct democracy. I'm very open to strengthening the powers of recall for MPs. I'm very open to having a few more referendums. Hopefully they will be respected this time. But I don't really subscribe to the idea we can replace the whole system of parliamentary democracy with people just voting on stuff and it'll all be great. I just think that's the sort of thing you write in a sixth form essay, frankly. And what I do believe is total reform of our representative democracy in the way that I described in my speech: fair voting, making votes matter, an end to unelected politicians, a restoring of the link between politicians and their communities, and fair devolution. And that way we can slowly mend our representative democracy. So more direct democracy, yes, but certainly not a system that's entirely based on direct democracy.
Thank you, Richard. Finally, Neville, you are all in favour of direct democracy?
How can, just quickly at one point, how does it work out that Amazon can pay, and this is when I saw this, it was crazy. Let's just get it right. What Amazon paid, what M&S paid in 12 months, Amazon hasn't paid over 20 years. So basically, M&S paid more tax, corporation tax in 12 months than Amazon paid over 20 years. How does that work out? Anyway, direct democracy. Well, it can run together with representative democracy. To start with, it has to. We can start. We're seeing it now. We saw it with the referendum in 2016. What was that? That was direct democracy. When we're going to have the mayor elections in 2020. I hope many of you are involved in that. Okay, that's going to be again some direct democracy. Again, running alongside our representative democracy. So it can work hand in hand. We have to start at local level, and if you follow the Swiss model, and I do ask you all, and I know Switzerland is a much smaller economy, much smaller country, quite successful outside of the EU, of course, as well. But if you look at the Swiss model of direct democracy and how it works, it has brought more people voting than ever before. More people feel engaged if they feel their vote matters. And did we not prove it with our referendum? Please remind me, was it 86% turnout in this country?
76.
No, I thought it was 86, sorry. 86.
Still very, very high.
Yeah. But anyway, the point was, the highest turnout we've ever had is when people felt that their vote actually mattered. Until we can do that, don't be frightened. We're being frightened of something because we don't know. Don't be frightened of the dark. It's a leap into the light. Direct democracy will make us, everyone in this room, will make you feel important, will give you the courage to go out and vote, and enable our children to vote. That's the main thing. They will feel engaged. Direct democracy is the future of this country, especially at a local level. Thank you.
Sorry, can I just quickly who's the Swiss Prime Minister?
Who's the Swiss Prime Minister?
Yeah.
No, they don't have one.
They don't have one.
They don't have one.
They don't have a Prime Minister.
I can tell you what they do.
We don't.
They don't. Yeah. They have a rotating. They have a rotating system, and each year from the leading party, someone Primus inter pares. First among equals, is that what they have?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what they have.
Yeah. By the way, I wouldn't put you on the spot now.
No,
I totally agree with your model. Like the Libertarian Party does as well. So yeah.
That's enough Latin for one evening. But Richard, I think you wanted to talk about Amazon.
Yeah, I mean, having disagreed on direct democracy partly, I totally agree with you on Amazon. I think that the idea that Amazon deliver to every doorstep in this country, we know who they sell to, how much they sell for, we know what their turnover is in the UK, and the idea that we can't tax them is a total failure of ambition by government. We believe as the SDP in a turnover tax for multinationals that if they're clearly a large company and they're not paying any profits in the UK, we'll tax them on their turnover, not on their profits.
Thank you very much. Now we do have one or two more questions that have been sent in to us, but we are definitely running short on time. Can I just ask the panel if those questions are sent to you in the near future, would you be prepared to provide written answers?
Yes.
To those, and we can put them on our website?
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Thank you ever so much for agreeing to that. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for this evening. We are the Croydon Constitutionalists. You can go to our website at www.croydon.org. Croydon Constitutionalists.uk. We're on Twitter, whatever that is, at Croydon Cons, and on the Facebook. Some of you may listen to our podcast or indeed our podcast. Please do follow us on Twitter and send in questions about things you might want us to talk about or not, or if any of you would like to be a guest on any of those podcasts, that would be brilliant as well. Finally, I'd just like to thank our panel for turning up this evening, giving their speeches and their thoughts on things. And if you could thank them all in the appropriate way, that would be brilliant. I'm sure some of them will stay around for a drink. I certainly will. So do please feel free to come and buy Mike or myself a drink, or any of these people, and I'm sure they'll be very happy to talk to you. If you can't stay around for a drink, have a safe journey home, a great Easter, and a very, very happy Brexit. Thank you very much for turning up. Bye-bye.